You're listening to Australia's national youth radio station, Triple J. For more info, go to triplej.net.au.
Thanks to the intervention of the ABC Board and the generous support of the Macquarie Bank, Triple J reluctantly presents the following 2 hours of unbiased, fair and balanced coverage of the week's topical issues. Would you please be upstanding for the National Anthem? And your hosts, Stirling Addison LLB and guest, as we present Restoring the Balance.
Good evening and welcome to Restoring the Balance. You have, of course, just heard Richard Kingsmill's show. 2007 is the name of his show. And you might think that he names it after the year of our Lord, 2007, but this is not so. The show is in fact named in honour of the number of times Kingsmill has asked Miff Warhurst into the Triple J CD library to see, in his words, his favourite 12-inch. Yes, Kingsmill is nothing if not persistent, but most certainly pathetic, especially given that in the words of those unfortunate enough to have seen his endowment, the recording format he most resembles is a mini-disc. This is, in fact, the last time you will hear Restoring the Balance on a Sunday night. We are, as it were, on the deck of the USS Bias, declaring, as George Bush did, mission accomplished. And like him, we know that while a momentous victory has been won for the forces of good, there still remains some minor mopping up to be done. I will, of course, elucidate more on that later. Helping us to say goodbye tonight, Tom Elliott from M&E Capital, Alan Jones, giant of Australian Talkback, as always, Spencer Penrose. We have guests tonight talking about the Australian funeral industry and the American Alliance. Plus, tonight, in honour of our final show, we will give you a foretaste of your ABC privatised. That's right, advertising here on the ABC. It is Restoring the Balance on Triple J. I mentioned we are, as George Bush was, on the deck of the USS Lincoln. We are, in fact, on the deck of the ABC Bias,
yes,
if you will.
Looking at the other shows, the other ships, as mere tugboats.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes, plenty of tugging going on.
If you catch my drift.
This decrepit old hulk was listing to the left. We have righted it somewhat, we like to think, but we are leaving you in the less than capable hands next Sunday of Safran & Co.
Oh, iceberg dead ahead.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yes, nautically correct. We will expand on that later. We will go into that a little bit later about what will be left in our wake. Yes. Spencer, it's been a big week for those of you in the Family First Party. You've seen the unveiling by an Australian of the Creation Museum.
And a big hello to a good friend of mine, Ken Kenworth, Hamstein, the Hammeister,
yes,
from the Answers in Genesis religious group, and his wife, Marilyn.
Yes.
We call her Mally. Supportive and submissive wife that she is. Ken's an old friend of mine. I did some work in his ministries in Queensland, as a matter of fact. And we always know he's going to hit it big and make us proud. And that's why we were so proud. Hasn't he done well with the world's first Creation Museum? And let's be honest, museums of natural history are quite unnatural, really. Traditional museums based in science and evidence have had it too good for too long, don't you think, Stirling?
Well, yes, possibly.
Yes. Finally, the Creation Museum is a museum that truly says how it was. The world is 6,000 years old. It was created in just 6 days, and dinosaurs did frolic happily alongside the first humans. And I think there actually is an animatronic display of 2 kids playing in a waterfall alongside a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yes.
I don't think people realise just how historically accurate the Flintstones really was.
Yes.
I mean, early man had velociraptors for pets, baby woolly mammoths as vacuum cleaners and so on and so forth. The museum, the Creation Museum, is a page right out of history, as the Flintstones actually said. And I saw the plans for this some time ago, and the design was very intelligent. Appropriately. There's a Noah's Ark and a animatronic display, which I think is wonderful. The gift shop next door where you're encouraged, obviously, to buy 2 of everything.
Yes, very well put. And just as the Bible predicted there would be a gift shop.
Yes.
Next.
Where all good Bible stories end.
Yes.
And now with every museum, of course, you need tour guides and people on the floor, the people on the floor who can answer any question with confidence and insight. And at the Creation Museum, you can ask the tour guides anything you like. Except for, what's the deal with the talking snake? Did Adam have a belly button? And if God created us, who created God? Apart from that, it's a fun time at the Creation Museum.
I would imagine children ask those sorts of questions, or idiots.
Congratulations, Ken.
It does mean, if we accept that the world is 6,000 years old, then that the dinosaurs who did die out and lovingly gave us crude oil are only 6,000 years old. And you would have seen, Spencer, in the paper today, the Prime Minister, perhaps the greenest Prime Minister we've had in history.
Yes.
The only politician in Canberra who has stuck his hand up and said, I truly care about the planet.
Amen.
And the long-term future of the Earth. He has finally embraced the whole idea of carbon trading and left the opposition in his wake. And he has said that targets for carbon trading will be set next year.
Great.
For next year.
So we're going to set a target to set a target?
Yes, effectively. What it will mean, however, is higher electricity prices. Now, the Prime Minister has said that it is up to the free market to decide the cost of electricity. And he is right to say that. And he, like me, decries the $10 billion a year that fossil fuel burning power companies receive in government subsidies.
Yes.
We will help them move from that towards the free and open light of the free market.
Good.
And that will happen. But I would like to say this to all those who bleated for action from the Prime Minister on this. I hope you are happy now. I hope you are happy. As I've long pointed out, scepticism about global warming was always the cheapest option.
Yes.
And yet, like school children bugging the parents to go somewhere unpleasant, here it is.
Yeah.
Higher prices for electricity. It is what you wanted and it is what you get. So now I will say to Triple J listeners, you will have to make some hard decisions. You will be paying extra for electricity. So what do we do? Do we put off getting our 9-year-old daughter's tongue pierced? Do we put that off? Do we pay more for our marijuana, which is, of course, grown with stolen, higher-priced electricity?
That's right. You need some sacrifices to make.
Do we hold back on spending that money on the paternity test for what you think may be your 4th child? And honestly, if you think that by selling that signed Craig Lowndes stubby holder, the one you picked from the vomit of a fellow race aficionado at Bathurst, if you think by selling that you can make up the shortfall, forget it. It's worthless. And I'll save Antique Roadshow the trouble. So what will you do? What will the Triple J audience do now that you have clamoured for higher electricity prices?
Yes.
Now that the Prime Minister is delivering higher electricity prices because you wanted it, because you think it will save the world, what will you do? What will you sacrifice?
Certainly many of the staff around here are talking about cutting down on the Botox injections.
Yes.
You can hear the tattoo equipment being put away.
Put away for good.
Right now as the target date for the target date is upon us very soon.
Reusing paint from old slogans from the 70s, protests and that sort of thing. 1300 0555 36, 1300 0555 36. What will you, the Triple J listener, sacrifice to pay higher electricity prices now that the Prime Minister is doing something proactive to save Mother Earth, which you so obviously care about? Triple J.
The Great Barrier Reef. Of the world's reefs, it's the largest coral one, home to thousands of endangered and vulnerable sea species. It truly is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. But this year,
the reef will rock! From the people who brought you Joker Smoker, celebrity smoking for charity, comes the environmentally aware sporting event of the half-decade, the Great Barrier Reef Grand Prix. 4 days of sea life, nightlife, and hoonerism, burning fossil fuels and exacerbating the myth of global warming to increase awareness of climate change. Don't just take our word for it. We asked one happy punter to labour the joke even more.
This is brilliant. Once I got past the initial irony of alcohol advertising on fast-moving motor vehicles, I stayed for the added pith of the Bundaberg rum polar bear being used as a logo on a machine that clearly has a lot to do with the destruction of the polar bear habitat. Awesome.
The Great Barrier Reef Grand Prix for Climate Change. Brought to you by the ABC.
Hey Christians, sick of saffron taking the proverbial out of soft targets like billionaire evangelists and putting the satirical cat o' nine tails away when it comes to the scary religions? You know the ones. Well, tune into the new commercial ABC because it's time for God to fight back. And this time he's cracked the sads and he's well and truly pissed off. 1 full hour of John Safran wailing and gnashing his teeth for 10 episodes. That's God versus John Safran. Coming soon to the new commercial ABC. Sure, we're not right on, but the truth can be a tangy sandwich. God versus John Safran. Because we won't let sleeping gods lie.
Restoring the balance. Global warming hysteria ends here.
Restoring the balance. Spencer and Stirling with you. We have pointed out today that the carbon trading scheme embraced by the Prime Minister, clearly not the greenest Prime Minister contender, you could say. The greenest, and by that I mean most inexperienced, would be Kevin Rudd.
That's right. I mean, you hear them waffling on about new hot rocks. Hot
Yes.
rocks was the big buzzword this week.
Yes.
Geothermal and so on and so forth.
Yes.
I have no idea.
Fuel comes from one place, it comes from a hole in the ground, black gold, coal.
That's right.
The fossil fuel burning industry provide us with our electricity. We will be paying more for it. Stupid people who embraced the alarmist message of the green left liberal media demanded action from the Prime Minister. He has obliged, of course.
And now you've got to pay for it.
We will be paying more for electricity as a way of saving Mother Earth from, we would like to think, from the myth of global warming. Others think otherwise. We are asking, therefore, 1300 0555 36, what are you prepared to sacrifice in order to pay higher electricity bills?
Sacrifice. Very foreign concept to most of the Triple J listeners.
Yes.
We're talking about the MySpace generation.
Yes.
It's all about me and
Yes.
MySpace.
What will you give up, in other words? Again, this is a foreign language. Yes, you're right, Spencer, the notion of sacrifice, self-sacrifice. We have Brad from Melbourne. Good evening, Brad.
Evening, lads.
Brad, electricity will cost the average Triple J listener more. What will you have to forego, in that case, to pay your electricity provider?
Look, whatever it takes, but I think it's time to ask some even tougher questions, Stirling.
Yes.
And maybe look at the whole global economic model.
Yes.
And
The one that has delivered unprecedented wealth to more and more people.
Yes, and maybe it's time to face up to the fact that the Earth and its resources is not a magic pudding.
Yes.
Those resources are finite, and they are running out.
Brad, we would very happily here on the show send you looking throughout the galaxy for other resources. Please come and get us when you find them.
Your spaceship?
Well,
or mine?
who's to say, Brad, that the sun may not one day run out with all these solar power and wind farms? Who's to say that one day there might not be any wind?
Well, if the sun runs out, we run out, don't we?
Not necessarily. You don't have faith.
If there's no sun, there's no us. It's simple as that.
There is sun. It shines from the backside of the Prime Minister. And it will never run out because he will always be Prime Minister. So thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Obviously, an eco-loony.
Yeah, sacrifice, very difficult for people to wrap their heads around.
An enviro nut job.
For a generation so unwilling to go to war.
Yes.
And sacrifice part of themselves for our freedom.
They've made no sacrifice on behalf of the troops currently defending freedoms we take for granted.
That's
in
right.
Iraq, in Afghanistan, in the Solomon Islands. Kelly from Melbourne.
Hello.
Kelly, electricity will cost more. Yeah. You will have less money, therefore, to spend on other things. What will have to go?
Well, I've decided after being to the football tonight that I'm sacrificing my St Kilda membership.
Oh, okay, this is
that
in the
Australian rules football.
Australian rules, Sterling.
It's not football as I know it.
No, it was a pretty atrocious game, so I'm quite happy to forfeit that.
Or perhaps would you prefer to hang on to your membership and not make that sacrifice, and then, as the cover of The Age in Melbourne yesterday, have Luna Park and indeed the whole St Kilda Triangle underneath water?
Yes.
Yes, I suppose.
A wonderful graphic representation of that whole area affected by global warming. I'm not sure if you saw that, Kelly.
No. Well, I'm actually from the country. I've driven up all the way from the country to see the football, and I don't see the local paper very often, so I miss that, unfortunately.
Excellent. Well, thank you for calling us, Kelly. Of course, anybody from the country will have to make sacrifices by making love to their cousin in the dark. This is what will happen.
It's often hard to tell which cousin is which.
Yes. That's if those in the country are even choosy about such things. I don't think they are. Mark from Melbourne.
Hello.
Mark, sacrifice, as Spencer keeps pointing out, a notion completely alien to anybody of your age.
I don't think so, actually.
Why?
I always sacrifice things. I remember going to a conference up in Sydney, conference against climate change.
Excellent.
That was a sacrifice.
Excellent.
What we'll be sacrificing is ammunition. You see, we have quite a problem with so-called Australian native animals on our family station, so we'll buy less ammunition now.
Yes.
For my rifles.
Are you not practising aggressive border control on your property?
My father and I did go on a boat trip once up north for barramundi and illegal immigrants, but we didn't do very well on the illegal immigrants. We got a few barramundi.
Yes, well, I think Australian Customs are doing an excellent job
They are fantastic, aren't they? And an excellent show, Stirling.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad to see you go.
Yes.
You've been the highlight of my week as I work in the leftist commune, which is health.
Whereabouts do you work? You obviously work at the ABC.
I can't actually tell you, but
you can't tell me.
Sir.
Well, we're glad to have been a beacon of light.
Oh, you have been.
A beacon of hope.
It's my week.
Thank you. Thank you. We are here to help. Dan from the Gold Coast.
Hey, how are you guys?
Dan, electricity will go up. John Howard has pledged to tackle our carbon emissions. This is part of the solution. Part of the solution. Therefore, more money will go on electricity bills. What will have to go?
Well, I'm actually going to have to get a smaller car stereo.
Right. Yes. What you mean? You're going to have to get one, or you're going to have to steal a smaller car stereo? You and your friends will get hopped up on ice and have to steal a smaller car stereo from, a pensioner or a mother of three when she pulls up at a traffic light with unlocked doors.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, normally I put in, the big subwoofers.
Yes.
But now I'm only just going to have to maybe stock stereo. I mean...
Yes.
It's not good, but I agree, we all have to make sacrifices.
Yes. I'm worried about the emissions coming out from the hole underneath your nose. So we might just put an end to those as quickly as possible. Thank you, Dan. James from the Gold Coast.
How are you going?
Very well, James. What are you sacrificing to pay? Nothing.
Absolutely nothing at all. I think we should consume and consume and consume. This will solve the problem. If you can just stick with me for a moment.
Yes.
This is going to make the great minds of this world come up with solutions to such things. And I see in 100 years' time that pollution will be the greatest energy source that this planet has ever seen. So just keep bringing it on. Chew it up. Chew the coal. I'm going to go home now. Going to get my Kero heater out, even though it's 27 degrees up here.
Yes.
Going to microwave a few 4 and 20 pies.
Yes.
Probably a couple more than I really need, but who cares? I'll put them on for 20 minutes or so.
James, why don't you invite some fire twirlers over and then run them over in your diesel four-wheel drive?
Absolutely. I'll get my gas flamethrower out off my balcony and say goodbye to them.
James is advocating, and I totally agree with this, a free market solution. Every time there is a problem, it is left to the free market and those with the profit motive to come up with a solution. Am I correct in summing your argument that way, James?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, it's just going to perpetuate the solution, We just need to keep on consuming and one day it'll just solve itself,
Yes. Why not, as well as the kerosene heater, to get some heat going, a big styrofoam tyre and aerosol can bonfire?
Yes.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
For the people of the Gold Coast.
Yeah, look, a few tyres on that. On top of that, I'll go and take a few tyres off a few cars and make a damn good bonfire down the beach, let the sea wash it away into the sea, and that'll solve that problem. People will think it a bit of an eyesore, but hey, the waves will come in and wash it into the sea.
Yes, capitalism, the beast that heals itself.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, Thank you, James, from the Gold Coast.
Not a problem.
If you'd like to call 1300 0555 36, tell us what you will sacrifice in order to pay higher electricity bills. This is Restoring the Balance with Spencer and Stirling on Triple J.
Here's a tax-paying Tasmanian-based logging company, earning valuable dollars that fund your bong-sucking student lifestyle.
Export!
Tasmanian Logging, turning unproductive old-growth forests into jobs.
$4,000 in tax. Can you believe that radio's the doctor? There's just got to be a better way, Jason J.
Well, there is. Thanks to perfectly legal high-end tax minimisation schemes, we here at Addison & Partners can help you, the highly paid breakfast presenter, from paying your unfair share.
2 cents in the dollar. That's more like it. And a whopping refund on the way. Let's party!
Addison & Partners Tax Minimisation. Because you're worth it.
Restoring the balance. Countering commie claptrap with considered conservative comment.
Apparently, your ABC now promotes homosexual drug subculture.
Well, you would think so.
And ecstasy taking. That's where your taxes go.
How many pills per minute was that one?
That's a very good question. Pertinent and germane. Robert Larkins, Spencer, is a barrister. He is also the worst type of human being. He's a whistleblower. Now, of course, we've seen the government rightfully, correctly pursue an employee of Australian Airports who blew the whistle on the lack of security. And the government have of course, spent a lot of money and effort tracking him down. And hopefully this man, for blowing the whistle on so-called deficiencies at airports, this man is facing jail, and we support that on this show.
Rightly so. You've got to be careful of those kind of people.
Robert Larkins is a whistleblower. He has decided to take on the funeral industry. Now, this being our last show, it is a funeral of sorts.
That's true.
Free speech has officially, as of tonight, has died on the ABC. It has died on Triple J. This is a funeral for people who dare to speak the truth.
That's right.
Robert, no doubt, thinks that he has done the same. Robert, thank you for joining us nonetheless.
My pleasure.
Robert, why have you decided to take on the funeral industry and write funeral rights, what the Australian death care industry doesn't want you to know?
Well, look, I've been to a couple of funerals that were duds, basically.
Yes.
The people weren't getting out of it what they should have. So, as a result, I decided to have a look at the whole process and write the book.
Yes, and now we know that American firms have moved into the funeral industry. They are right to do so, and we welcome their participation here. Have you targeted them for slander and defamation? Have you made a series of unbased accusations towards them?
What I was surprised to find out is that a lot of funeral directors are all owned by one or two big corporations.
Yes.
So that means companies like Simplicity or White Lady are all owned by one corporation.
Yes.
And after the person dies, the body's taken to a central warehouse, essentially.
It's
and
efficient.
They're all processed through one place. So you think what you're in fact dealing with is a brand rather than an individual company.
Yes.
I haven't actually thought about my own death at all. I mean, I find it's a bit of a bummer of a subject. I'm of the belief that the rapture for me will come before then. But talk us through some of the forward-thinking kinds of funerals and things that can happen after you die, such as brain donation. What's that? Because Gough Whitlam was involved in that. How can we discourage Triple J listeners from donating theirs?
Well, it simply couldn't happen. It's a physical impossibility.
Exactly.
Well, the brain donation program, they actually, they like people they like alcoholics. Oh. They like to be able to look at people with unusual brains, and they actually follow the person through prior to the death, and then have a look at the brain after the death and try and work out if there are any difficulties with the brain that becomes apparent.
Now, can you give us some example then of the cost of the average funeral? So the average Triple J listener knows how many homes he must burgle. He must burgle in order to raise money. How many times he must pimp a female family relative in order to raise the money for the funeral when his brother or cousin dies in a police chase?
Well, if you get cremated, it's probably between about $4,000 and $7,000.
Yes.
And for burial, it's about $8,000 to $12,000.
Is there a cheaper way of doing it?
Yeah, do it yourself.
Is that legal?
That is. I mean, in essence, we're all funeral directors because you don't need a ticket to be a funeral director. You can hang your shingle up and call yourself a funeral director. It's not like getting married where you actually have to have a marriage ceremony, so you don't actually even need a funeral, so you can do it yourself.
It's interesting how people assume that you do need a funeral director just because that's what everyone else does, and you actually go through a step-by-step process of how to prepare a body for burial and all that. It's quite fascinating. How did you go about researching some of this? Because forgive me if it's kind of ghoulish. I mean, if you're not used to the death industry.
Well, I talked to a lot of doctors and people who know about these things, and they helped me through it.
Does it give you some sick joy putting large companies out of business? Because that's effectively what you're doing. I might release a book saying, here's how to build your own car. And then all of a sudden Toyota say goodbye and Ford say goodbye and tens of thousands of working class people are then flooding the streets, defecating on the streets, because they, generally speaking, don't know how to use toilets anyway. Is this sort of thing you want?
Do you want to create another plague, basically, is the question?
I think the funeral directors will be around for a long time, yet they've adapted to change before and they'll do it again. I just think people are going to want to get back more power over the way it's all dealt with, and I think the funeral directors will manage to survive any community backlash to the way things are happening at the moment.
What about alternative burials, such as vertical burials or burials at sea?
I'd like to be buried diagonally, just for something different. But verticals, they're slowly taking over.
Well, about verticals, there's one company that's looking at vertical burials, but the real way of the future is natural burial grounds. And the idea there is you get buried in a biodegradable coffin.
Hippies.
And you use the money raised, the body breaks down quickly, it becomes fertiliser for a tree that's planted, and it becomes like a giant land care scheme.
Yes. Yeah. Well, unless the Prime Minister endorses it, it should be illegal.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm into that.
A lot of people don't know that Scott Dooley, who's an announcer at Triple J, has requested to be buried at sea. The Coast Guard has refused on the grounds that his body is too toxic.
Is that so?
It's too toxic.
I know he was running his own show called 6 Inches Under, which was something completely different. How about, you were telling us just there about green funerals, and you just mentioned their burials at sea. Apparently it's a lot simpler to have an ocean burial than you would think.
Yeah, well, you've got to apply to the federal government for a licence to dump at sea, which is cost you $1,000, but it's surprisingly simple to get. You just need someone with a boat that can get you about 40k offshore and get beyond the continental shelf, and then you have to make a shroud and weigh it down, put some holes in it,
yes,
and you can put the body overboard and bury it at sea.
It's not the Anglican way, and it's therefore disgusting. Robert, finally, have you got your own funeral planned?
Oh, I think I might go for a natural burial ground.
Yes.
We don't have one yet in Australia, so I plan to be around for a long time.
So we have no... I would disagree, because there are plenty of places where you can find rotting, stinking hippies.
Yes.
I'd direct you to Nimbin. You could start there, or anywhere on the Central Coast of New South Wales.
Even here at Triple J, lots of dead wood.
Yes.
In Nimbin, they bury a lot on private land.
Yes.
And, of course...
private land is theft, though, is it not?
Well, you would probably respect someone with wealth and power like Kerry Packer.
Yes.
And he managed to bury himself and get buried on private land.
Excellent.
So you'd approve of that.
You see? Yes. Yeah. Private enterprise to the last. To the last. The book is called... Funeral Rites, What the Australian Death Care Industry Doesn't Want You to Know, or One Man's Tyrannical Crusade to Put Good, Hard-Working Companies Out of Business. His name is Robert Larkins. The book is available when, Robert?
As from tomorrow.
As from tomorrow. Stocked in all bookshops. Thank you for joining us, Robert. Triple J Restoring the Balance.
The following is a scene from an upcoming documentary about growing up with Michael Moore as your dad.
Why did they build the Great Wall of China?
Well, son, in 1872, Dick Cheney and the National Rifle Association issued a no-tender contract to Halliburton, who used African slave labour hired by Bin Laden to
Coming
build a wall.
soon, the film event of the year. My dad was a bearded guy who constantly talked shit.
And that's not all.
Restoring the balance. Proudly using non-union labour.
By the way, next time you go in, you've just been to whatever shop will give you money for the DVD. You've wrested from the hands of the dying cancer patient, and you've got your cash. the EP you need to announce to the person working behind the store of behind the counter of the record store, who, by the way, is in a band who are just about to make it.
That's right.
They're just about to make it.
They always are.
Yeah. So when you hand your money over to that person, ask for Cement. That's the name of the CD.
Or just do like Richard Kingsmill does and just download it off of LimeWire.
Yes.
That's what he likes to do.
Yes, or ring up the record company and make adenoidal threats. They seem to respond to that too. We are asking the talkback number here, 1300 0555 36. What would you be prepared to sacrifice? Because we will have to pay more money for electricity. That will be a fact of life. The Prime Minister has manfully tackled the issue of global warming and Australia's part in it. And his solution is to pay more for electricity to reduce carbon.
You asked for it, and now you've got it, and now you've got to pay for it.
Give the people what they want, and they will turn up effectively.
That's right.
Which isn't quite... Anyway, we have Aaron from Ocean Grove. Aaron.
Yep.
What are you prepared to sacrifice so that electricity companies
I'm willing to
get their money?
John Howard and the Liberal Party.
How so?
To be honest.
How would you sacrifice them on the altar that you will build in all the spare time you have as an unemployed man?
I'm employed. I'm employed fully.
Yes.
I pay my taxes.
Yes.
I'm paying for you being on air right now.
I'm sure. How much a week do you pay in tax?
It's none of your business, mate.
Well, I was just...
What I'm saying is, can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
You Sterling and Spencer.
Yes.
Do you have kids?
No.
Do you have children? They don't have children.
No.
Well, my wife Nadine is pregnant, although she's not showing yet. We haven't actually got official confirmation of that. It's a faith-based pregnancy.
So bringing kids into this world, so what are you actually doing for their future on this earth?
What are we doing? For this generation, I'm helping to manage our generation's mergers and acquisitions.
You mean plastic money?
Yes.
You're managing plastic money, which doesn't do anything for this earth they live on.
Well, it does do much for this earth. Certainly the hundreds of acres that I own. It is certainly...
...in the air and puts carbon dioxide in the air.
Well, the petrol that I put into my Lexus has to go somewhere.
Into the air?
Yes.
To choke you and your kids.
Well, it won't choke me, and my kids will certainly be rich enough to move somewhere where the environment is certainly more pristine and pure.
Oh, yeah. No, I think the big companies will just spend it on consumers on this earth and not worry about going further.
Yes. Certainly, members of government are alarmed at your insight, Aaron, but thank you for calling. You will sacrifice John Howard.
Mate, they're not alarmed. They're just worrying about the next paycheck, their next pay rise.
Yes. I hope pay rise to hard-working company directors.
Yes.
I'd love to see a pay rise conferred to a company director and not met with outrage from the left liberal media, who, of course, sit on exceedingly generous union-bought allowances.
Yes.
And then whine when a hard-working man
such
makes
as the head of the
$30 million.
Yes, exactly. There's the head of the Reserve Bank, a good working-class man.
Yes.
Just getting danger money. That's all he is.
Yes. Well, speaking of which, we have international capitalist and hedge fund manager.
Here we go.
From MM&E Capital, Tom Elliott.
Yes, Stirling Spencer, very wonderful to be in here again.
See you, Tom.
Now, it's funny you should talk about danger money at the Reserve Bank. You know that Reserve Bank employees are trained to carry pistols for when they carry the money from the Reserve Bank to the other banks, and they have a shooting range underneath all of their buildings.
Do they really?
Absolutely they do.
Oh,
that is what you call muscular capitalism, I think.
Yes. What did you think of that, the previous caller, Tom?
Well, not much, but unfortunately very typical, of course, of the listenership of Triple J.
Yes.
Now, of course, you've been just gradually introducing, and I'm sad to say that it probably won't catch on here, but the idea of ads at Triple J, because, of course, we do know that all of the ABC is probably going to be the subject of a takeover fairly soon.
We hope.
A lot of the dead wood will be cut off.
Yes.
Great.
But the point is, for listeners like that, I'd say you'll like the ads, because if you want to go and stop and pack the bong or take a bit of a break from listening to the sort of wisdom that you hear tonight, ads allow you to do it. And how will you know what to buy next time you go to the supermarket?
Ads inform. That's the thing.
Educate.
That's the thing. I mean, people are going on about the amount of money the government is spending on political advertising, something like 1.3 billion over the course of the Howard government. And I would point this out. Every year, the ALP has $800 million spent on advertising.
Yes.
It's called the ABC.
Yes, exactly. And of course, that Liberal Party government advertising is very important because if it only sways a few thousand voters from doing a very stupid thing at the next federal election, and that is, of course, voting for what I'm going to call the man of contradictions, Kevin Rudd.
Yes.
Let's just go through some of his contradictions, Stirling. Now, of course, he likes to talk a good union talk, social justice and that sort of thing.
Yes.
He has his wife, not even called Mrs. Rudd.
Yes.
She will not even take her husband's name as the scriptures provide for.
Yes.
She's a multi-millionairess. And how did she make those millions, Spencer?
Underneath John Howard's government.
A flexible workplace arrangement.
Profiteering.
She made them under John Howard. She made money under John Howard.
And is it a coincidence that, well, under John Howard, quite possibly, is it a coincidence that she's now choosing to sell the business when it's probably worth as much as it's ever going to be worth? Because let's just say the heavens fall in and Kevin Rudd does win the next election.
In what I am predicting will be a Rudd bath.
Yes.
I'm calling it a Rudd bath.
And we'll be fertilising the nation with Rudd and bone.
Yes, and the streets, the gutters will run with Rudd.
I do like the idea of the human compost heap that your previous guest had, because I can think of all sorts of people I'd stick into it.
Yes.
But her business won't be worth anything next year if the Rudd bath happens.
Yes.
So she's a very savvy businesswoman.
Of course.
Does Kevin live in a big house? Of course he does.
Yes.
Does he drive an ozone hole widening car?
Well, in fact, he does.
He
He's
does.
a Ford Territory.
Yes.
Does he wear freshly ironed, short-sleeved polyester shirts every day when he's up in Queensland? Yes, he does.
He does.
All paid for by someone called Therese Rain, who is supposedly his wife, which I don't understand, because if she's his wife, she's Mrs. Rudd, same as his mother.
Yes.
So a man of contradictions. So social justice on one hand, hundreds of millions of dollars made from the sweat of the brow of other people on the other hand. And Kevin, of course, the ABC, of course. I mean, talking last week, I was horrified. I mean, I accidentally switched on Channel 2.
Yes.
And I saw Tony Jones interviewing the bald chap.
Yes.
The environmental shadow spokesperson.
Peter Garrett.
Peter Garrett, the man, as we say on this program, with more hair than brains.
More hair than brains, no doubt. Well, they were, mutually self-congratulating each other. Do tell us about your wonderfully interesting policy on carbon emissions, Peter. Oh, Peter, I'll be doing this, and we'll be having lots of consultations and setting up community work groups and emissions trading.
A two-man daisy chain. It was a two-man daisy chain.
Anyway, our Prime Minister looks at this, comes out and says, I'm going to be straight with the Australian people. I'm going to tell them how much it's going to cost. And you two have been doing a wonderful job tonight just reminding people that it will cost. If you want to get rid of the carbon, electricity will become more expensive. You have to give up your football club memberships.
Yes.
Of course, we've had the brilliant suggestion of just sacrificing political parties on an altar.
Yes.
But at least the Prime Minister was honest enough to do this. And yet Kevin Rudd, he's always accusing the Liberal Party of not being honest, and yet he himself is not honest about the cost of carbon emissions.
Triple J listeners will have to accept that the pornography films that they watch will be less brilliantly lit.
Less brilliantly lit, perhaps less Vaseline on the lens, you know. All that rubbish they look at on the internet most of the time, that might have to slow down.
Yes.
We're starting to think that possibly higher electricity prices aren't such a bad thing, are they?
Well, there are consequences, of course. For actions, there are consequences, and this is a generation divorced from that concept. Of course, there is clamouring for action over the planet getting warmer. In fact, Prime Minister has been told to do something by the most expert panel ever assembled. Musicians.
Yes.
Musicians who are playing Earth Day.
Yeah.
And he has heeded their expert call. And, of course, has done something, and now the consequence, more money.
Now, of course, the other thing, Stirling and Spencer, people in the business community have to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's what we always do. We are getting ready for the Rudd Bath, shifting the money offshore as fast as we can go.
Yes.
Of course, older listeners who may have been to the UK in the mid-1970s will remember what a Labor government did back then when the rubbish was just piling up in the streets.
Yes.
Of course, we know who fixed all that up, don't we? Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
And, so the business community is making plans for the Rudd Bath, shifting the money away, fortifying the fence around the house, armour-proofing the car, all those little things that will need to be done when society inevitably collapses.
I certainly am on standby to move to a gated community, to live amongst other fellow Anglo-Saxon professionals. Society will collapse.
Protected by the people, the bodyguards who work in the Reserve Bank.
Yes.
Downstairs.
With their pistol training.
Have you been down there? Is that
I have, in fact.
The cutouts that they shoot at of Kevin Rudd?
They have old,
Kerry O'Brien?
Essentially Labor Party posters from previous elections, going back to its time with Gough Whitlam. That's almost been shot out now. So
pretty hard to miss.
Bob Hawke is still a very popular target down there. Paul Keating, of course, again, most of his face is missing on the official target. But, they have a wonderful time at the Reserve Bank.
As well they might, of keeping interest rates historically low. Under John Howard.
So that Australians, average working people, can buy houses in increasing numbers.
As they are doing.
As they love doing. And all these houses taken away next year.
Tom, we are asking 1300 055536, what are you prepared to sacrifice? You will have to pay more for electricity. It will mean less of your disposable income will go on the things that you like.
Yes, well, there's a simple solution, as we said in the business community. Just make more disposable income.
Anathema.
So obvious.
Anathema to the people listening. Nonetheless, give us a call and amuse us greatly. 1300 055536. What will you sacrifice? Tom, please stick around. It is Restoring the Balance on Triple J. You at Spencer, you at Stirling, Tom Elliott from MNE Capital has decided to stick around. Spencer, of course, you would be no stranger to youth groups.
That's right, church groups, church youth groups, wonderful mixes, great places for young people to mix, find God together, find themselves together.
Yes. Catching and Killing was the name of the band Youth Group, who must have started at some sort of youth group.
More of a catch and release sort of situation.
Yes. An album, Casino Twilight Dogs. Its seemingly disjointed title, no doubt seen as very clever by the people who will buy it. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it does to the initiated. Casino Twilight Dogs. I don't know what it means, but I'm just obviously not cool enough.
It's a wonderful idea in between bucket bongs, I'm sure, that title.
Yes. We are asking, carbon emissions will be curtailed, they will be reined in by the Prime Minister's plan. Unfortunately, it will cost more. We will see the difference on our electricity bills. Electricity companies contribute greatly to our gross domestic product. They work very hard in bringing us electricity. We will therefore pay more. Brent from Kinkilla. Brent, what are you prepared to sacrifice?
Well, Stirling, I'm actually a geologist. I work in the coal industry.
Yes?
Yeah, man, I just found a dinosaur fossil with an ark next to it the other day.
Yes?
I'm actually willing to sacrifice Tasmania, though.
You're willing to sacrifice Tasmania?
So I've heard of a new technology. You actually hook battery-powered things up to them, and you put them in little pods, so you can actually extract energy from them.
Yes.
Is that right?
You might try that on your phone.
What was that?
To start. You might,
You can try it on my phone, but I don't know if it works from here, mate.
Sounding somewhat droid-like, but I think we'd all understand getting rid of Tasmania. I think we all...
A proud Liberal tradition there.
There is, and certainly some great trees to log there.
Yes.
Some of the old-growth forests.
Yes, well, I mean, if we're running out of electricity, there's nothing like a big fire, is there? And the biggest fire you can get is with a big tree. Of course, so you talk about a great Liberal tradition down there, but that all changed a number of years ago when a certain set of laws in Tasmania were changed, allowing in...
Yes, gay marriage.
Yes, the pink dollar.
The PC police.
The Hobart Mardi Gras. Oh.
Yes. Pink dollar, of course, not the greatest threat to Tasmania. Well, people going
some
about
might
guns.
say it is. Yes.
People going about the share market darling that is guns, the old growth logging company.
Look, without guns, no one in Tasmania would have a job.
Yes.
It's either Centrelink or guns down there.
Or gay marriage. That's a job.
Mm-hmm. What a choice.
Yes, exactly. We have Cam from North Mackay. Cam, electricity will cost more. What are you prepared to sacrifice? Obviously, freedom
Cam's
of
done
speech.
the honourable thing. He's sacrificed himself into the human compost.
Yes.
How's it going?
Very well, Cam. What are you
Cam.
prepared to sacrifice in order to pay more for electricity?
Triple J.
I totally agree with sentiment.
Yes, it's full of left-wing communists, and I think that I'll be saving a lot of electricity by not listening.
Yes. People say left-wing communists. There's not many right-wing communists.
No.
Yes.
No.
What at the moment, what are you listening to on Triple J, Cam, apart from us, apart from the 2 hours of truth that you get here? Do you listen to anything else?
Well, normally I listen to right-wing propaganda kind of stuff, but at the moment I thought I'd just change the channel and see what's happening, because I know that you guys are listening to the right-wing, better side of the politics.
You'll find that the right wing doesn't need to dish out the propaganda, though. All it is truth. There's no need to convince anyone.
It's ladled out lovingly, like a mother might ladle out chicken soup to her pneumonia-ridden child. Yes. Have a dose of the truth. You'll be squirting it out any minute now.
We'll end up finding out that the truth is the best part of valour.
Absolutely. Now you're up in Queensland. Queensland used to be known as a hotbed of true politics. Should we say truth politics? Is that still the case, or are people starting to succumb to the pink dollar, the sort of left-wing conspiracy and so forth?
Oh no, we're still part of the one nation policy.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, of course, we don't endorse. We don't endorse One Nation's platform.
No,
we don't endorse it publicly.
No, but we endorse their right to say it.
Yes,
That's right. Yes.
That's called freedom of speech.
I mean, there is a silent majority of Australians.
Well,
And,
1 million people voted for them in the 96 election. We shouldn't forget that.
I mean, I know people who say they're just saying what everybody else thinks, and I don't agree with that either.
Yes.
But again, I support their right to say it.
I couldn't agree more.
And if there's any reason to have a public broadcaster, that would probably be it.
Until it's privatised.
That's right.
Now, we have been playing ads on the show this evening to give people a foretaste of what a privatised ABC. Your ABC finally at work, earning money.
Sounding so much better with commercials as well,
Yes.
I think. SBS with commercials. It's a better view.
SBS with commercials featuring dollops of nudity.
Yes.
They couldn't do anything without somehow involving nudity in it. Or long-running ethnic feuds.
How would you know where the jokes in South Park are if the commercials did not punctuate it?
This too is a very good point. We're full of them here. It is Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
Triple J is on the move, heading out on our biggest and most incredible adventure ever. And we're taking you with us.
Pack your fresh undies as Triple J goes AWOL.
Listen to Myth, Jay and the Doctor tomorrow morning from 6 for all the AWOL details.
Triple J.
We all know someone who can't speak English. Does that make them a terrorist? Probably. But incredibly, you can still speak English and nurture a hatred for freedom at the same time. So to help you identify the sort of person who wants to put your sister in a veil, we've isolated these phrases and voices. If you hear one of the following, you're with a terrorist.
I think executive salaries need to be looked at, don't you?
Terrorist. Hello, I'm Kerry O'Brien. Terrorist.
No, we're not getting him circumcised.
Terrorist.
I don't own a Shannon Knoll CD.
Terrorist.
You know, I don't mind Kevin Rudd.
Terrorist.
So it's up to you to report them to the National Security Hotline. Operators are waiting to talk to you.
Restoring the balance. Global warming hysteria ends here.
It does end here, and so does this current run of the show, Restoring the Balance, will not be on next Sunday.
Sadly.
I've been painting the picture all night. We have of us aboard the USS left-leaning liberal bias, the aircraft carrier.
Yes, it's the boat with only one oar on the left side.
Yes.
So it keeps us going round in circles.
It certainly does, and we are there proudly on the deck, the steel deck, with the banner behind us, mission accomplished.
Catching whales as we go.
And I will say this, we are behind the lines. We are not disappearing altogether. That's all I can say at the moment. We are not disappearing altogether. But Safran is back next week with his peculiar brand of religious-themed entertainment. If you want to call it that. If that's what you want to call it, go right ahead. We are at the moment speaking the truth. We have one final caller who wants to tell us how he will be sacrificing, what he will be sacrificing to pay more for electricity as part of the Prime Minister's carbon trading scheme. Here's James from Brisbane. Good evening, James.
Mate, how's it going?
Very well.
I would be prepared to give up, well, since it's we're doing something good for the environment,
yes,
I'd give up my Greenpeace subscription.
Yes.
Good man. I would have thought you should have done that already.
If not, then give up, like you said before, give up the buckets.
Yes.
Yeah.
James,
Doing up the disposable income.
James, provided that you can actually read, the Greenpeace magazine on the coffee table was there probably just to impress the dope-addled chick you brought home. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Greenpeace, of course, the newspaper printed from rolly paper. So you can, as he can't handle the
James
truth.
has left, yes.
Can't handle the truth. Greenpeace, of course, appearing every year at the Comedy Festival in Melbourne.
That's true.
Yeah, we look forward to them destroying the lives of hard-working Japanese whalers.
Yes, that's right. I mean, what are Japanese school children going to eat when they want to have traditional cuisine? Like a bit of humpback, is there?
No.
James, impressing the ladies with his amnesty T-shirt. Off to harpoon another whale in the nightclubs of Brisbane.
Yes, as he's done, no doubt, many times before. We looked with dismay at a news story online at the one computer at the ABC that isn't permanently locked onto hardcoreporn.com.au.abc employee sit here with his pants around his ankles.com expressing.com his freedom to.com relieve himself.com sexually. It's a union privilege here. It's a union privilege. Now, the one computer there that was displaying, and we must congratulate Rupert Murdoch on this site, news.com.au.
It's a great site.
A distressing story about a family with red hair who have been harassed for simply having red hair. They have obviously proud Scottish roots, and yet, because of that, people have turned on them.
Well, you would think simply being Scottish in itself would be reason to have a go. You could, rather than the red hair.
Yes.
I would think, certainly, the Scots...
Well, you should, if you are Scottish, at least try to once in your life, like the Islamists go to the Hajj pilgrimage, try to attend the reunion of your Scottish clan.
Yes, and of course, in the Middle Ages, people with red hair were often accused of witchcraft and other forms of devilish arts. Not a bad reason to persecute them. Now, before we mention the Reserve Bank of Australia, of course, keeping the interest rates relatively low to help provide hard-working Australians with homes of their own. Of course, now... Governor Glenn Stevens, although he's largely bald these days, is a redhead.
Yes.
And apparently one of the reasons he joined the Reserve Bank was precisely because of that pistol practice that you get from a young age down there as a way of venting his anger, venting his frustration, making his voice of years of repression, having been a redhead, known. He was getting revenge.
It would take a brave man to tease a ginger minge packing heat.
Packing heat and with the ability to make your mortgage cost more.
Yes.
As Kevin Rudd will do next year.
He will. Provided that, of course, come the election this year, that there is, as we are calling on the program, a Rudd bath.
Yes. And speaking of the fire crotches being accused of witchcraft, let's go to the obvious. Julia Gillard.
Yes.
Come on.
There is, of course, the obvious parallel to be made here. Her boyfriend, she, of course, refuses to get married.
Her alleged boyfriend.
We pointed out many times in this program.
Which is in line with Kevin Rudd and his wife not having the same surname.
Yes. She is committed to unions so long as they are not heterosexual unions.
Yes.
And we've pointed out refusing to have children. How can somebody care about IR when unemployment in her uterus is running at 100%? That's what we've said often on this program. But her boyfriend is a hairdresser, clearly a sham.
Right.
He's a male hairdresser, as Penny has pointed out. Very few of these men have girlfriends.
Yes, that's right. And he's got a ponytail, I believe, and or a vinyl jacket, I think I saw on television.
He's not Walker, Texas Ranger. The point I'm simply making is he's employed full-time to discolour her hair and disguise the red roots.
Yeah.
The electorate are on to Gillard. They're on to her IR lies. They're on to the fact that, indeed, the carpet does match the drapes. And philosophically as well.
Her pubic hair is red. That's what you're suggesting.
Now. But Julia Gillard, of course, if you were going to burn people for witchcraft, and if you're going to look around for witchcraft in the modern age, of course, she would be a very, very likely candidate.
Yes, she would. The chemicals in her hair would burn. So we're asking, have you been persecuted for anything? Your beliefs? Have you been persecuted for a physical feature? For a failing? Have you been persecuted for listening to Triple J?
For just having red hair?
Have you been... Well, if you do have red hair, please call us. and detail your life of woe. I would be proud of the Scottish heritage it signifies, and you should be.
What about Kerry O'Brien? He's another redhead. Deserves persecution.
Irish Catholic, of course, Viking background. He would not be a black Irish.
No.
They come from the Middle East or Spain, therefore closer to the irrational Mediterranean types.
Yes. The hot-blooded Latin sorts.
Yes, yes. So if you are a redhead, give us a call, 1300 055 36. If you've been persecuted for anything, ring up and we will give you a sympathetic ear. This is Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
Here's a tax-paying Tasmanian-based logging company, earning valuable dollars that fund your bong-sucking student lifestyle.
Export!
Tasmanian Logging, turning unproductive old-growth forests into jobs.
$4,000 in tax. Can you believe that, Radio's the Doctor? There's just got to be a better way, Jason J.
Well, there is. Thanks to perfectly legal high-end tax minimisation schemes, we here at Addison & Partners can help you, the highly paid breakfast presenter, from paying your unfair share.
2 cents in the dollar. That's more like it. And a whopping refund on the way. Let's party!
Addison & Partners Tax Minimisation. Because you're worth it.
Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
Bill Spencer, Penrose from the Family First Party, myself, Sterling Addison from the Young Liberals, Kirribilli. Speaking of things religious, Jesus Christ spent 3 days on the cross as payment for our sins. I think next time he comes back to earth, God will make him listen to 3 days of Australian rap.
Great.
To suffer. No crosses needed.
No.
3 days perhaps of speech defect. Super future.
Oh.
Connecting, we hope, with the boys in the hood in America. Cultural misappropriation gone bananas. Of course, speaking to the Black Soul Brothers in the ghettos of, shall we say, Burnside in Adelaide?
Yes.
Shall we say Glen Iris in Melbourne? Shall we say Woollahra in Sydney?
Mean streets.
Yes.
Urban decay.
Yes. It's all around. Inner city white flight. Yes, frightening stuff.
The hoods.
Now,
drive-bys in four-wheel drives.
Spencer, you've been casting a keen eye over a proposal by a Dutch show. It was revealed as a hoax.
Yes.
As a hoax.
A sad hoax.
It was a ridiculous host meant to draw attention to the lack of organ donation in Holland.
It was a reality television show in which a supposedly dying woman had to pick one of 3 contestants to receive one of her kidneys.
Yes.
Something like that. And it has been revealed as a hoax. And initially I was, as a Christian man, against the whole idea. The whole idea of organ donation, where I'm coming from as a follower of God, is that if you can't make the best out of what God has given you, organs included, then that's nobody's fault but your own, is it not?
Yes.
Well, why should someone else, like a prime example of the awesome might of God's creation, have to sacrifice a part of themselves to keep the runts of the litter alive?
Yes.
It's almost survival of the fittest.
Yes.
If I believed in such a thing, which I don't. But maybe maybe the idea of organ donation as a prize in TV shows isn't such a bad one. I'm thinking Kevin Rudd donating a spinal cord, a backbone to him, maybe even some testicles, so he knows exactly what it's like to run a country.
Good luck finding a donor in the Labor Party. There isn't one.
That's right. Maybe on Julia.
Yes.
But who knows? But enough about organ donation. Let's talk about organ acceptance and your lovely girlfriend Penny, who is no stranger to receiving organs from all kinds of men. Sterling?
Yes. Organ pledges.
Yes.
Pledges.
Playing the church organ, of course.
Yes, she's done that,
True.
of course, at St Michael's in Woollahra.
Great.
And she's listening. And look, we'll be speaking about her a little bit later on. But the whole issue of organ donation has brought to me a plan that I think is not popular now, but it will be embraced one day, I hope, by the Australian Medical Association. Within the Australian Constitution is the ability for us to absorb New Zealand. Now, we can see New Zealand as either a fellow long-standing democracy and fellow member of the Commonwealth across the Tasman, or we can see it as a bountiful source of human spare parts. There are 4 million people over there. 4 million people. Plenty of kidneys, plenty of spleens, and I did say this lightheartedly, plenty of brains in very good condition because they've never been used before.
Yes, exactly. Of course, when the New Zealanders come to Australia, the IQ of both countries is lowered, generally speaking.
Yes.
But, of course, organ donation for money. Now, I know, Spencer, this does offend your Christian principles, you know, that the body is inviolate. And I know you believe in the principles of sperm retention and various ancient arts like that.
Absolutely.
But organs are worth a lot of money for those of us with the money to pay for things. I say, why shouldn't we?
Well,
why shouldn't business? I mean, if someone's... turn it on its head. If someone's not making good use of their organs, just leading a slothful, unchristian life, not out tilling the soil and managing the beasts that God has put on the earth for our benefit, perhaps their organs should be compulsorily harvested and given to those who can make better use of them.
Yes, yes.
Rather than the genitals for Jesus that we have talked about here on the show, genitals for absolute strangers.
Yes.
It's an interesting concept.
Yes. Again, in the case of New Zealand, it's never used.
Never used. In not bad condition. Some organs better than others. As you say, you wouldn't necessarily want to receive a brain.
No.
But, a strong oxen-like heart or something like that, keep you going for a few more years.
The Catholic proportion of the population would have enlarged livers, of course.
They would. Of course, the example that's set by the priests.
Yes. Holy wine. That they seem to need to drink around the clock to stave off the devil and other superstitions that you'll be hearing about next week when Father Bob comes back.
Exactly.
And as we pointed out many times on this show, he does, of course, go around and say the rosary in front of the condom machines here at the ABC.
Is that so?
Yes. That's his style. It is, generally speaking, if I'm not having sex, you won't either. And that sort of thing. We have Linda from Melbourne. We were talking about a red-headed family who are abused and persecuted because of the colour of their hair. Linda?
Hi.
Have you been persecuted because of the colour of your hair?
Constantly.
Tell us about the suffering you've endured.
Lots and lots of suffering.
Yes.
Mainly because I'm not like everybody else.
Yes, clearly it's a crushing burden and has left you...
Burden. I don't know how I cope with it every day, to be honest.
Now, Linda, would you describe yourself as a carrot top or perhaps a darker red? Do you have the freckles that go with it?
I have the freckles, the no eyebrows, the no eyelashes, and the bright red, or as people like to say, orange hair.
Yes. Linda, what is your ethnic inheritance?
Scottish, I think.
Yes. Well,
you
should be proud then.
Oh, extremely. Kilts and everything.
Yes.
And Linda, I'm guessing you're from Melbourne. You support the AFL.
Yes.
Now, I noticed that one of the teams in that competition, Geelong, seems to have an incredibly high proportion of redheads going back generations. Are you a Geelong supporter?
No, I'm not. I probably should be, considering my last name's Ablett, but...
Yes.
Oh, well.
Yes.
How about that? Linda, what kind of names have been held at you as abuse? What kind of derogatory titles?
Red-headed bat rooter, Santa pants, ginger pubes.
Yes, ginger pubes.
Just to name a few.
Have you had the old chutney muff there, Linda?
Oh.
No, I haven't.
Well, I'm sorry you had to hear that, Linda.
Tom is obviously lowering the tone of the program. We do apologise,
This, of
Linda.
course, is the last time this show will be on, probably for very good reasons.
Yes. Well, Linda, there is always hair dye. Have you ever considered that?
I suppose I could always turn into an emo and dye my hair black.
Does Julia Gillard's rapid ascension to be deputy head of the Federal Labor Party give you hope for the future?
It does. It gives me lots of confidence.
Would you like to have a partner, a boyfriend like she has, who's a male hairdresser?
Of course, and they could dye my hair black and I could be the emo I've always dreamed of.
Yes, whatever an emo is.
How about that other great redhead and a big sponsor of the new commercial ABC, Ronald McDonald?
Yes.
Oh, top bloke. Absolute champion.
Well, he is proof that people with red hair can forge a viable career in private industry.
That's right.
So he should be an idol of yours, Linda, and we thank you for joining us. And this is, I mean, if proof were needed that redheads can almost lead normal lives and can in fact operate telephones.
Yes.
Linda has some grasp of the English language. So they can, and they are almost fully integrated into society.
Well, look, Stirling and Spencer, we often say in the business community, the cream rises to the top.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there aren't tasks, simple tasks.
Yes.
That people with red hair, people of low intellectual ability, there aren't things that they can do too to feel better about themselves. But what we have to do, of course, is get rid of all those people who are just bludging off the dole. The people who really should be being harvested for organs and so forth.
The Triple J audience, in other words. Will from Sydney. Will, do you have red hair?
Yep.
And you're calling us from a sheltered workshop?
Nah.
Will, what's your experience of having red hair?
I want to file for redism as a form of racism.
Yes.
This is an interesting concept. Because, Linda was delightful, but for every Linda, there is a Lindsay Lohan.
Yes.
Who is giving the redheads a bad name.
Yes.
Will.
Will, again, I'll ask your genetic inheritance, your ethnic inheritance. Are you Scottish?
No, Irish-Italian.
Irish-Italian. You were hit twice with a very cruel stick.
It's a big Catholic sandwich, really.
Obviously. I hope you weren't ringing for sympathy, because you won't get any here.
No,
just think of red as the flames of hell, which is probably where you're going.
I'm after cash.
Cash, of course, exactly. Yes, this is what a handout, in other words.
That's right. So you'd like the federal government to treat you as a special discriminated against minority, perhaps to give you your own community with other redheads?
Possibly even a hall to sit and congregate in.
That's right, and sing the songs and do the things that redheads do together.
Yes, yes.
Well, surely there's millions of dollars to give you to make a movie about the fantasies of your history that no one will watch. Surely we'll dig that up as well.
Chuck Norris, he can play me.
Yeah, Chuck Norris. And Will, what kind of names have been hurled at you as a redhead?
Oh, many, but I love the Chutney one.
Yes.
I think I'm going to hear that one at work on Monday.
Oh, you work?
Yeah.
What sort of a job do you have?
I'm a banquets manager.
A banquets manager?
Yeah.
So we've run out of steel pads to clean the pots. Quick, Will, reach into your underpants.
I wonder whose hair this is in my soup. Oh, I know, it's Will's, because it's red.
Yes.
And he's a freak.
Yes. Thank you for joining us, Will.
Good night.
Banquet manager.
Yes, I think it's a trumped-up term for waiter, as it used to be called in the old days.
Yes. Will's banquet managing style would go something like this. Would you like fries with that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Or as many waiters often ask, they often ask me, beef or chicken, I often ask in return, Whopper or Nida? Yes. Yes.
Amen.
Amen to that. This is Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
The following is a scene from an upcoming documentary about growing up with Michael Moore as your dad.
Why did they build the Great Wall of China?
Well, son, in 1872, Dick Cheney and the National Rifle Association issued a no-tender contract to Halliburton, who used African slave labour hired by Bin Laden to
Coming
build a wall.
soon, the film event of the year. My dad was a bearded guy who constantly talked shit.
And that's not all.
Hey Christians, sick of saffron taking the proverbial out of soft targets like billionaire evangelists and putting the satirical cat o' nine tails away when it comes to the scary religions? You know the ones. Well, tune into the new commercial ABC, because it's time for God to fight back. And this time, he's cracked the sads and he's well and truly pissed off. 1 full hour of John Safran wailing and gnashing his teeth for 10 episodes. That's God versus John Safran. Coming soon to the new commercial ABC. Sure, we're not right on, but the truth can be a tangy sandwich. God versus John Safran. Because we won't let sleeping gods lie.
Restoring the balance. Countering commie claptrap with considered conservative comment.
It is Restoring the Balance on Triple J. It is now, it being our final show, of course, Spencer. We are, of course, here with Tom Elliott, MM&E Capital. It is our final show.
Yes.
We've talked funerals on this program. Shortly, we are to talk about the state of the Australian-American alliance, but it now gives us great pleasure. In any Triple J event, when announcers get together, sooner or later, the conversation amongst the broadcasters turns to one man.
It turns to influencers, it turns to the firebrands in the medium, the real visionaries that inspired so many announcers here at the station.
It turns to the people. It's not cool to like. And one name and one name only comes up, and one name that we'll say Kingsmill contributed a lot of money towards the recent $1,000 fine.
Yes.
It is, of course, Alan Jones. He can be heard every morning on 2UE Breakfast. We heartily recommend you listen to that show in preference to the Triple J morning show. You will, of course, get the truth on Alan Jones. He joins us on the phone now. Good evening, Alan. It is a pleasure to chat with you again on our last show.
Sterling, look, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, but I must correct you. I'm on 2GB.
Oh, 2GB. 2GB, I'm going back a while there.
It's done by that wanker Peter Fitzsimons.
Yes.
And we don't want to talk about him.
Thank you for correcting me. Now of course, Alan, the left will not leave you alone. They are blaming you for encouraging mums and dads to invest in, well, high-risk, low-return property schemes like Australian Capital Reserve. I'm interested to know, Alan, are they ever going to stop blaming you for things beyond your control?
Look, Sterling, one of the pitfalls of being a radio broadcaster on commercial radio is that some of your sponsors go bum up. And when that happens, I'll be there to fill the gap. That's why I've created my very own property development as part of my Alan Jones Recommend series.
Where are you planning to build this development, Alan?
Spencer, it's in Kiama on the New South Wales coast, on the south coast down there, right next to the blowhole. In fact, it's called Alan Jones's Recommends Blowhole Lakes.
Now, Alan, because we are, of course, on the ABC, we have to be very careful about the supposedly fine line between advertorials and informed comment. Yours, of course, is informed comment.
Absolutely. Look, I understand that, certainly, Sterling. Let me clarify that. It's my opinion that if you're over 50 and you're considering retiring, the Blowhole Lakes is the perfect low investment, high return investment that can not only be beat, it's the perfect spot to see your wonderful golden brown years out. Yes. Each townhouse has a view of the blowhole and also has a miniature blowhole in every ensuite. Now, that's, in my opinion, an investment opportunity that just can't let blow you by. That's the Alan Jones Recommends Blowhole Lakes. Don't talk to your financial advisor for more information. Just invest the rest of your life savings in the property development of the century, the Alan Jones Blowhole Lakes. You'll be blown away. That's simply my opinion.
A man with some very strong opinions there, Alan Jones.
We are certainly grateful for his presence on air this evening. Thank you very much. Alan Jones, of course, can be heard on 2GB, 2GB tomorrow morning.
That's right.
2GB. Anything else before you go, Alan? Of course, it is open to all Triple J investors, had they money.
That's right, absolutely open to all Triple J investors. Now, I heard you talk about redhead people before.
Yes.
It should be noted that both Pontius Pilate and Peter Fitzsimons have red hair. One sacrificed Jesus, the other sacrificed the Australian Rugby Union team, which is more sacrilegious. It's a tough one, but I think the logical conclusion is that Fitzsimons is a wanker.
Yes, yes. Now that is well within the ABC editorial policy. You know why? Because it's fact.
That's right.
It's not opinion, it's fact. Thank you very much for joining us, Alan.
And look, I know that you're going to be shafted off, put on the shelf. I just want to let you know there's always a home for you at 2GB. Just give me a call, 131-873.
Yes, fancy Alan Jones offering to men at a loose end a home. That's the sort of man he is. This is Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
The Friday Wit. The final nomination goes to an unnamed commercial drive time radio show. We just received word they are currently organising a busk-off. That's right!
Oh. Well, are Miff J and the Doctor going to flip it and do the secret sound next week? Is this where you're heading?
No, we've done that.
Weekday mornings from 6 on Triple J.
We all know someone who can't speak English. Does that make them a terrorist? Probably. But incredibly, you can still speak English and nurture a hatred for freedom at the same time. So to help you identify the sort of person who wants to put your sister in a veil, we've isolated these phrases and voices. If you hear one of the following, you're with a terrorist.
I think executive salaries need to be looked at, don't you?
Terrorist.
Hello, I'm Kerry O'Brien.
Terrorist.
No, we're not getting him circumcised.
Terrorist.
I don't own a Shannon Knoll CD.
Terrorist.
You know, I don't mind Kevin Rudd.
Terrorist.
So it's up to you to report them to the National Security Hotline. Operators are waiting to talk to you.
Restoring the Balance. Proudly using non-union labour.
This is Restoring the Balance. You are with Spencer, you're with Tom Elliott, you are with myself, Stirling Addison. The song we enjoyed then, Regular John, Who We Are, from the EP Marrickville. Now, Marrickville is a fetching suburb. It's a charming suburb, best seen from the front end of a 747-400 on climb out.
Yes.
Yes. on the way to somewhere far more interesting. Speaking of far more interesting, the aircraft you're on may be going to the United States, our friend and ally in the ongoing war against terror. It is now our privilege on this, the final Restoring the Balance on a Sunday night. Safran is back next week. It is our privilege to speak to Chris Griffin, who's a research fellow from the American Enterprise Institute. They are an august body whose purposes are to defend and improve the institutions of American freedom and democratic capitalism, these being limited government, private enterprise, individual liberty and responsibility, vigilant and effective defence and foreign policies, political accountability and open debate. All the things that would disappear in one stroke should a Rudbath occur at the next federal election.
How interesting that we were talking funerals last hour.
Yes.
Indeed, the Australian-American Alliance would have its own funeral.
Yes, it would.
Should Rudd be in.
We would be back to the Cold War. We would be under the skirt of the Chinese.
Yes. Well,
we would be speaking Indonesian.
He speaks the language.
So now to speak about how we, the Triple J audience and Australians in general, can strengthen the Australian-US alliance, we now speak to Chris Griffith from the American Enterprise Institute. On the line from Washington. Good evening, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good evening. Thank you very much for having me on.
Chris, in our day-to-day lives, especially in America, what is the current view of the American public towards Australia and its contribution to the ongoing war against terror?
The American view towards Australia is, there's two elements always. It's overwhelmingly positive,
yes,
and it's not something that comes to mind very often. It's not a relationship that many Americans think often about, but when they do, it's in very positive terms. And on the war on terror in general, we're in Iraq, Afghanistan, separately, but in the tsunami response after the 2004 tsunami, Australia played a vital role that Americans appreciate greatly.
Yes, yes. Now, we were one of only 5 nations that voted with the US against a UN resolution ordering Israel to tear down its barrier on the West Bank. We've supported and contributed forces to military intervention in Iraq, despite public sentiment being against such a thing. We've signed a free trade agreement that has seen the US increase its balance of trade surplus with Australia by almost $1 billion. We've agreed to purchase $16 billion worth of US-made fighter aircraft. What more can we be doing as a country for America?
I suppose the question, as I would phrase it, not what Australia can be doing for the United States, but what the United States and Australia together can be doing to enhance the relationship, enhance what they can do in Asia. Essentially, you list all the important things that have been done in recent years, which the United States, the degree that they're aware of, should appreciate. The biggest question right now is that certainly at the military level, we've achieved great levels of interoperability. Now it's sort of policy consolidation, making sure that going forward for the next several years, as you may have changes, you will have a change in administration in the United States, may have a change in government in Australia, making sure that positive initiatives from recent years can be carried forward despite changing governments.
Chris, you talk about a change in government, and we have correctly identified that if that happens here, we'll be calling it a Rudbath. Now, 34 years ago, your country did us a great service. We had a previous Labor Prime Minister who almost ruined Australia between 1972 and 1975, and we know that the CIA stepped in and helped get rid of him. Could we ask that America does the same thing if Kevin Rudd gets elected here?
I have no expectation nor expertise.
We know you can't say anything publicly.
Yes. That's really not the biggest question to me. Right now, what this comes to, what I work closest on, is the U.S.-Japanese alliance, how it relates to Australia and the newest trilateral talks that took place last week. And the question is, how can we explain the value of U.S.-Japanese-Australian cooperation as a natural upgrade for the traditional U.S.-Australian alliance, the traditional U.S.-Japanese alliance, in a way that will make Asia more secure? Some comments by candidate Rudd criticizing the recent Japan-Australia defense agreement, for example, throw that into question.
Well, he of course, is in the league of the Chinese. He speaks Chinese himself.
He speaks Chinese, yes.
Many of us do. There's truly no harm in studying a language, to say the least. But the key point is that this isn't a question of forming an alliance against China. This is making a defense relationship for Asia. If China develops in such a direction that it becomes a hostile and revisionist regime, it would be necessary to have those defense instruments in place. If China develops in such a way that it becomes a democratic and peaceful regime, a trilateral relationship between the United States, Australia, and Japan will be more effective at engaging a democratic China. So there really isn't any contradiction between seeking to see China develop into a more peaceful country and hedging against the possibility that it will become a more warlike country in the future.
When Dick Cheney was here in Australia last year, there were some hateful protests at his visit in Sydney. Does that kind of behaviour when American dignitaries come to our country, does that actually interfere with our positive relations?
I wish I could say that it did. The sad truth is that very few Americans pay attention to that issue. That's an essential criticism of the United States. The spat between candidate Obama and Prime Minister Howard more recently garnered a bit more attention, but the fact of the matter is that very few Americans follow and appreciate the issues developing between the United States and Australia. So it's sort of cost-free to some degree, except for the impact that it has on governmental relations. It's essentially cost-free whenever you have people in the street criticizing senior administration officials.
Is it fair to assume, therefore, that most people, when they talk of Australia, talk only of the Prime Minister's daughter, Melanie?
That's not in the United States. I'd say that she's unknown here.
She's referred to as the flower of the nation here.
Yes.
And we've run a very successful competition as to what her first male child will be called when he is born.
And we hope it is George.
Well, that'll be something to look forward on the news as it appears here. It's, in all honesty, not something that's received tremendous attention in the United States.
There must be some reporting error, but you mentioned the possibility of muscular Chinese diplomacy and a country with superpower aspirations. In the event that does occur, there may be a flashpoint over the Spratly Islands. There could be a Chinese blue water Navy capability stretching its legs throughout the region. If that does happen, can we arrest Kevin Rudd as a Chinese speaker?
I hope not, because I'm also a student of the Chinese language, and I'd hate to be seeing him in the brig. The real question here is developing the capabilities to respond to any Chinese buildup. In the last several years, they've deployed about 1,200 short-range, medium-range intercontinental ballistic missiles. They have advanced cruise missiles. They've just released the F-31 medium-range cruise missile that can hit targets in Australia quite easily. The talk about developing anti-missile defense cooperatively among the United States, Japan, and Australia is the essential response to this. We have to phrase it diplomatically that it is not an anti-Chinese missile defense. And phrasing it in those terms makes sense, particularly because North Korea poses a threat to all of our countries in the region.
Yes.
But again, having this capability either responds to a China that is more aggressive, or if China becomes more democratic, we have the diplomatic strength to negotiate with them and have a better relationship with them in the future.
Can I suggest, as a way of covering up the fact that you really are pointing the missiles at China, why don't we point a few of them at New Zealand, which is a country just off to our southeast, and then you can say, look, we're just defending against all threats here.
Well, that's the great thing about missile defense. You're not really pointing missiles at anyone. They're pointing up in the air. And most MD is going to be Aegis destroyer-based. It's flexible. It can be surged to the Sea of Japan if North Korea is posing an especially stringent threat. Can be posed to the East China Sea. Of course, in the unlikely event that New Zealand were to develop an ICBM force point at the United States, that would be a consideration. But I would
strongly urge
in the foreseeable future.
I would strongly urge, given that may be a remote possibility, nonetheless, given the success of Iraq, I would strongly urge preemptive action.
Yes,
and just take out New Zealand anyway.
Well, you could bring that up with your next interviewee. I don't see that in my brief for the foreseeable future.
Another big issue we have here, of course, is our Air Force here in Australia. We have approximately 70 fighter aircraft and about 35 F-111 bombers, which we gratefully purchased from you in the early 1970s. The wings are starting to fall off. The spare parts aren't available anymore. Is there something you think the US could do to get us a few more and newer aeroplanes with which to defend ourselves?
The F-111s, there are a lot of problems with those. It gets very complex. The essence is Australia is the only country left flying them. The spare parts essentially aren't available, and the airframes are aging. Australia has agreed to purchase, as you know, upgraded F-18 Super Hornets in the near future. Those will be developed over the next few years as a stopgap, while the progress of the Joint Strike Fighter aircraft, the F-35, is going forward, which Australia has already agreed to purchase about $16 billion worth of.
Yes.
So the progress of that, and I would applaud the decision of Prime Minister Howard to invest in those F-18s, should provide Australia with a robust air force to fill the period between now and in the early 20-teens, whenever the F-35 will be deployed.
Do we have enough of them, though? I think we're going to have 24 Super Hornets. I mean, I think China has more aircraft than this. Will we have enough?
Well, China certainly does have more aircraft. The question is, and this is a problem that the United States faces, that Japan faces, that Australia faces, that Singapore faces, any country in the region faces, is that China's Air Force military overall is growing very rapidly. And it is becoming more and more difficult for any one country to consider maintaining a robust deterrent posture with regards to China without thinking in terms of coalitions and alliances. So the number 100 has, approximately 100 has been sent by the Australian government for years and years. With the F-35 coming aboard, the value, the qualitative value of 100 aircraft will be enhanced significantly as the Wedgetail comes online. Likewise, so I see this as something that it's not so much the number as the capabilities that Australia will be able to deploy, in particular in coalitions.
Yes, Wedgetail, of course, being airborne early warning radar. Of course, if you do see a Chinese fighter jet over the sky where you live in Australia, it's not here to deliver noodles.
No. That would be unlikely.
Yes, it's here to deliver tyranny.
Secret messages for Kevin Rudd.
Yes. Chris Griffin, thank you very much for joining us. Research Fellow from the American Enterprise Institute, warning us of the dangers of a Prime Minister who can speak Chinese. Don't contradict me, Chris, because I'm reading between the lines here. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
This is Restoring the Balance on Triple J.
The Great Barrier Reef. Of the world's reefs, it's the largest coral one, home to thousands of endangered and vulnerable sea species. It truly is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. But this year,
the reef will rock! From the people who brought you Joker Smoker, celebrity smoking for charity, comes the environmentally aware sporting event of the half-decade, the Great Barrier Reef Grand Prix. 4 days of sea life, nightlife, and hoonerism, burning fossil fuels and exacerbating the myth of global warming to increase awareness of climate change. Don't just take our word for it. We asked one happy punter to labour the joke even more.
This is brilliant. Once I got past the initial irony of alcohol advertising on fast-moving motor vehicles, I stayed for the added clip of the Bundaberg rum polar bear being used as a logo on a machine that clearly has a lot to do with the destruction of the polar bear habitat. Awesome!
The Great Barrier Reef Grand Prix for Climate Change. Brought to you by the ABC.
That is the sort of robust information advertising we need on the ABC. Furthermore, Spencer, I'm sure you'd agree, and Tom, you would too, the only way to save the Great Barrier Reef is to use it for things such as Grand Prix.
Absolutely. Boat races. Yeah. Screw off, sea snakes, this one's for you.
Yes.
That's what we like to say.
If you give people an interest in something, they'll take care of it.
Yes.
Say that you can't go and enjoy that, they'll say, bugger it.
That's a very good point. And also, just to develop that theme further somehow, the New South Wales Shooters Party wants 10-year-olds to hold gun licences. This was in the newspaper today. We know it's true.
It's about time.
We know it's true, and I would support guns in class because unofficially, guns in class already exist in the public school system.
Yes.
In the public school system. I would support them in private schools. And here's why. I want to give you a very clear demonstration of why a gun in a private school would be very useful. Picture this scenario. As we know, all history teachers are notoriously left-leaning. And they are pawns of the cultural elites who teach a one-dimensional and black-arm view of our history. Doesn't matter, private or public school, this is the fact about history teachers. Now imagine a student being informed of his complicity in the stolen generation, simply pulling his blazer to one side, meeting his teacher's eye and revealing his sidearm. And I think that would force some on-the-spot historical revisionism.
What about biology class, where they refuse to teach creationism?
Exactly. Would you dare do such a thing to a tooled-up class?
No.
You would not.
If you're packing heat, if you've got a 357 by your side, if you're armed to the milk teeth, as all kids should be...
Yes.
Why wouldn't that be a good thing?
Mums, when you're packing the school bag for your son as he races off to school, an apple, a cut lunch, and a 357, or Uzi for a high rate of fire, good stopping power for close-in combat.
Yes, well, my grandmother used to remember a time when, boys who went to certain private schools that had cadets, they could be on a train with a loaded 303 and bayonet. And people were polite to each other. And they made sure that if you didn't give up your seat for an elderly patron or whatever, you got one in the guts with the bayonet.
Yes.
And we miss that sort of discipline these days.
I hope it was one in the guts after a good charge up the length of the carriage.
Yes.
That's
screaming.
Right. With the war face.
Yes.
What better way to guard against bullying as well, seeing as this is the hot topic this year, the bullying.
Yes.
Arm all the children.
Arm them all.
Yes.
And, of course, that was the argument in favour of nuclear weapons, of course. If we all have them, we won't be making war on each other. And, of course, that's what a bayonet and a 303 does in the hands of 10-year-olds.
Mutually assured destruction in the school ground. I totally agree with it. Now, Spencer, speaking of all things creationism, I noted with interest this week that recycled sewage is being used as snow.
Is that
in some Australian in some Australian ski fields. And when I was reading this, I turned to Penny and said, if anything is confirmed, our decision to only ski in Austria, this is it.
Yes.
This is it. And, of course, it brought up memories of being in Austria last year with Penny. We were in Lech, one of the resorts up there.
Oh.
And I spent all day tackling the blue run, and Penny insisted she's not a very good skier.
Yes.
So it took 2 male ski instructors to teach her the finer art. The irony being they never left her hotel room.
This is strange.
In there all day.
So skiing is strange, of course, Stirling, and, we're in Australia. I mean, artificial brown snow, I suppose, from now on. I mean, that won't be like the lovely white ski fields of Europe, will it?
No, natural snow there, natural snow for people who can afford it. Of course, it is a popular pastime here to anybody earning over $75,000 a year. It is therefore ruined by people who simply aren't of good enough standing.
Yes.
Good enough breeding.
Yes.
Now, it is, of course, our melancholy duty to inform everyone that this is our last show. It is our last show on a Sunday night. Spencer has been somewhat overcome. Next week it will be Saffron and Father Bob, so the drooling subordinates who pass as Saffron's audience will no doubt be pleased. They've missed being told what to think.
Yes.
Imagine their joy at the return of the Jewish Messiah, although unfortunately not the one promised us by the Bible.
No.
We do urge everyone to avoid taking part in the Rudd bath, and I will urge people this. I would ask, what sort of nation would turn out and turn on a grandfather to be, as John Howard is, and leave him homeless and jobless? And I will say this because my contacts in the Liberal Party have told me this, that if he is forced into unemployment, he will be forced to live with Penny, his pregnant daughter, in a one-bedroom flat in Cabramatta, earning money as a lookout for the Asian triad that runs the illegal brothel upstairs.
Yes, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
That is what you will do to John Howard if you participate in the Rudd bath.
It is a dark vision for the future, and one that can be avoided if you only think correctly come election time.
Yes. Well, my final piece of advice for all voters out there, think of this. If you want a future where godless communism replaces church-going individualism, if you want a future where interest rates are a great deal higher than what they are now, and worst of all, if you want a redhead nearly at the top seat of Australian politics, vote Labor at the next federal election.
If you want a redhead with their finger on the nuclear trigger, the choice is yours. Spencer, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Stirling, and angels on your body, and may we walk in the light of Christ together.
Thank you, Tom, for coming in. Thank you, everyone associated with putting the show together. And be warned, there will be no condom vending machines in Triple J next year. Father Bob will burn them all. There will be no birth control available to the women of Triple J.
As is his wont.
As is his wont, yes. Splashing holy water everywhere. We thank you for your time. Restoring the Balance will return in some form. The mission has almost been accomplished. Stay tuned.
Triple J.